move on to the next matchup.
Sure, why not? Let's go ahead and move on with it. Pheno versus Jarl is done. Right and wrong. Ever heard of average or B+?
No.
How about A-? Those exist. Bozzzton versus BoarControl is what we're going into, and Bozzzton has brought the only player to bring Warlock in the European region, and I imagine this deck is specifically designed to try and take advantage of Druid a la the Priests, I believe, of this week.
Yeah, I think absolutely so. And if you look up kind of statistics on what Druid's weakest matchups right now, according to the the mass statistic aggregation, Warlock, just as Zoo and as Highlander Zoo or Highlander Warlock are right up there near the top in terms of decks that beat up on Druid. So I do think this makes some sense. Just in a looking at Druid perspective, I just don't know if I have massive faith in like the deck's overall power level.
You want to specify?
I just think some of the cards, for example, like Nephset Thrasher that came out, a lot of people put a lot of stock in, 3-mana Yeti. The problem is if that Zoo is even slightly behind, you turn that 4-5 into like a 2-5 or a 1-5 because you force it to attack into your minions instead of going face. And then in that sense, it just ends up being like a handicap to the Zoo because they're causing themselves damage to just take care of inefficient minions on each turn. So then because of that, and because the other cards that were perhaps hyped to be in Zoo aren't even being played in the list right now, you're in a position where Zoo is just kind of at a similar power level to what we saw before the expansion, which in my mind is not particularly high. The one card I will say has impressed me is Disease Vulture. I think that card has been extremely powerful, but still it costs 4, and quite often Zoo games are decided a little bit before that card can come down.
I will agree with you on the Thrasher point. I think that card sucks. But he's up against BoarControl in this one, and so we're going to see if this deck can get some work done. I think Boar has a couple potential targets in this matchup. I'm looking at the Holy Wrath Paladin is one of the first ones that comes to mind. It's a deck that can struggle to aggression, although it doesn't necessarily struggle to aggression. It's got counterplay, but strong, consistent early starts I think can really hurt. And then the Druid on Boar's side as well. And so you can see the protects where Warrior is protected on both sides. Not too much of a surprise. It's just one of those linchpin decks. And Hunter banned away from Bozzzton with Shaman banned away from BoarControl. And Shaman has been pulling a lot of respect.
It has.
Where bans are concerned.
It really has, yeah. Perhaps rightly so. You've really gone on record saying that you think that this could potentially grow as more refinement of the deck comes in to be like a real terror of the metagame just because of all the things it can do with the power of the double battle cry. Like, double battle cry means so many things depending on how you want to build the deck. It can mean value, it can mean tempo, it can mean burst damage.
It can mean all the above.
It can be all of those things in one tight little package, which is where Admirable wants the deck to get to. But no Shaman this series. We are just going to be looking at a Warrior going up against Zoo here, and this is a matchup where, again, I do potentially just fear for this Zoo a little bit. They have been buffed a little bit, I guess, in the matchup just because Dr. Boom Mad Genius is now so much slower. It's another dead draw that they can pick up. So there's the potential, as I was about to say, that you just sit with a couple of dead 9-mana cards in your hand with Dr. Boom Mad Genius and Archivist Elysiana. Boar has found one of those, but he has also found a Warpath to help him bridge the gap.
Yep. If you want my opinion, I think on paper overall, this matchup's pretty terrible for Bozzzton. He's got a double Flame Imp start with a Direwolf Alpha to back that up. So I do think that this is one of the anomalies of games where I'm looking at this and I might consider him favored. Just because he's going to pile on so much early damage.
Yeah, and even with Warpath, Brawl, Plague of Wrath as a hand, which seems like it's, pretty dreamy against Zoo, it's just so much damage coming through in the meantime. And this, after I just gave the speech on how Nephset Thrasher can be a liability in a lot of spots, this is the dream scenario. When you've already got 10 power in play on turn 2 and you get to back that up with a Yeti for 3,
hey,
yeah,
Drain Life's going to make that 6.
Good old Drain Life. Never lets you down.
It looks a little different, but, 2 extra life and deal 2 damage.
Yep.
This is the matchup where I do like Thrasher. Against control decks, I don't care what my cards do to me, as long as they're big numbers.
All right, that's a huge draw.
So are you on the...
gargantuan draw. A colossal draw.
This is a tough turn, though. I think that there's justification for the Warpath to set up the Restless Mummy.
Yeah.
I think that there's justification for holding on to the Mummy to think about Diseased Vulture.
What now?
I think there's some justification in pressing that armor button, tanking the hit, and hoping to brawl stuff away.
Ooh.
I think those are in order of good.
So which one did you say first?
I think there's some justification to Warpath to set up Restless Mummy.
Okay.
We can see that Bozzzton happens to have Voidwalker in hand, and that would stuff that play.
Yeah, see, I'm kind of just feeling the Restless Mummy. I mean, Bozzzton also has Nephset Thrasher #2, which kind of stuffs me suggesting to use the Restless Mummy, because my idea is to Restless Mummy and then have the Warpath available for turn 5 or turn 6, because you'd think your opponent has run out of minions with more than 3 health at this point. So you can set that up over the coming turns.
So I'm going to make a really controversial statement here, Sottle. I like them both.
I honestly hate you so much. Pick a lane.
It's one giant luxury cruise lane, all right?
I like that play that Boar made, and I will stick to that under interrogation, unlike Flip-Floppy McGee sat next to me over here.
Just because I like them both, it doesn't mean... like, you can like 2 things.
You literally said they were in order 30 seconds ago, and then I asked you to clarify, and you clarified.
And that doesn't mean I dislike the other. For instance, I love steak. Steak is my favorite, but sometimes I eat chicken. That doesn't mean I hate steak all of a sudden. And when I eat steak, it doesn't mean I hate chicken. And it doesn't mean that chicken's bad.
Why do you call?
Maybe you just need some broad acceptance in your life.
Maybe you just need to make some damn sense.
Let people enjoy things.
Whoa! How is that an accusation?
Second brawl. Bozzzton may have gotten stuffed. He's got 1 card left, Boar, end him.
Yeah. I think the fact that next turn you can Eternium Rover 3-path as well is just like a pretty big signifier that you want to just be brawling this madness away.
I guess the problem is that it could potentially only be taking 3 attack off board.
Yeah.
So you're weighing up the odds. Never tell me the odds.
No. Yeah, 25% of the time this goes wrong, for sure. But it goes wrong in a way where you don't, like, lose the game. You know, taking 3 power off the board when you're at 11 is a good amount of damage to take off the board.
It's like taking 9 off the board when you're at 30.
Yeah.
Wow.
Ooh, okay.
Hey, armor up kind of takes 2 off the board. That's like a brawl. Ooh, that's lethal potential.
3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 14 max, yeah.
I was thinking Discover into like a Grim Rally.
Sure, yeah. It doesn't even have to be double Kobold. Like, just Rush Guy plus Kobold is lethal as well. Spell Lackey gives outs.
Faceless Lackey.
Dire Wolf plus Kobold is lethal.
So now my question is Life Tap better? No, because the Grim Rally is not an out.
So many possibilities.
Grim Rally here would be, what, 3 more plus 2 more? Yeah. So Dire Wolf out is lethal. Doesn't get it.
That one's interesting, though.
Almost out of time.
In the event of some Warpaths coming in, you get potentially a hefty amount of damage. I think I'd like to see Bozzzton Life Tap.
Bozzzton just going to town.
That's a weird spot for that. Soulfire, he's fearing exactly Ziliax? Couldn't he have just buffed the Kobold in this spot?
Yes. That is also an excellent point. That was a really wonky looking turn from Bozzzton.
Yeah, I don't know about that Soulfire. I mean, you said something in Worlds that really stuck with me. When Warlocks are playing Soulfire to the player, they're blowing up. We're hitting a 4-5 because we're fearing Ziliax? Like, no way. You're just not beating Ziliax here, I don't think.
I mean, I'd wind that back a little bit. I think he's in a position where building a board like this, like if it's just Ziliax and not very many other useful cards in BoarControl's hand, he's in a decent spot to beat that. It's just
you didn't think about Warpath, it seems like.
Right. That's kind of what I was going to get to, is you put yourself in a position where, yeah, okay, you beat Ziliax, but you haven't really represented lethal outs, damage outs against removal options. It doesn't really make too much difference here. Like, the Soulfire would have gone face and you would have lost your Flame Imp to the Warpath play instead.
Yeah, I guess something to think about is there's only one copy of Soulfire and one copy of Leroy, but if he was at 6, Leroy wasn't out here instead.
That's a good point. BoarControl could have changed his play, though, and taken the extra point of armor off the Eternium Rover instead of having it in play if he needed to play around that eventuality.
Which I very much think he would have done. But,
yeah.
You know, in that situation, your Flame Imp lives.
No, because the Omega Devastator hits it, right?
Okay, so the Devastator trades in.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
This place is scary.
Oh boy.
But we can go back and forth on that one for a very long time, but it looks like the result is that BoarControl has turned the corner here.
Yeah, I mean...
And it was the most aggressive possible start from Bozzzton. Remember, that Flame Imp has just died, and Bozton's opener was double Flame Imp, if you need some kind of representation of how much damage that guy has pushed already this game.
And he petered out now. This is the spot like where you need the follow-up of, like, you want to draw Solarium, you need Diseased Vulture.
Archthief for a fun. I can't even say it with a straight face, I'm sorry.
That card is never good. It was entertaining, though.
It really was.
Super Collider about the worst. This 5-mana upgrade here. Equip a 1/3 weapon.
What now?
I mean, I'll pay 5 for that. Sign me up.
Honestly, it's probably slamming into play, or the Archivist Elysiana.
I was going to say that you could probably talk me into playing the Elysiana.
Look at poor Space.
Because
It's like, really?
A, it's funny, and B, it probably wins anyway.
At this point, you just counterattack, right?
Don't necessarily think it's right. Maybe it is.
It's a 7/7.
Yeah, it is.
You're going to get like Gore Howls and Mortal Strike and random nonsense that deals damage.
Maybe the world's silliest War Golem is just what you want right now.
Especially versus the world's most civiliest player. Or turns it down.
How about you Super Collider them in the face instead? Now are you interested?
No,
Oh.
because if we're going to push face damage with that, I wanted to play the War Golem.
Yeah.
Put this apple on your head.
I don't want to do that.
Get in there and fight, maggot!
Jungle 1 complete. See about 2, 3, and 4. Whoa. I would tend to be seizing my damage here as well.
Yep, I think so. He needs to just keep incrementally trying to push that total down to Leroy range as best as he possibly can, because that's about the only out he has in this spot.
Thank you. I really did not want that to be a 70-second brawl. At that point, you're just torturing the poor guy.
Yep.
Job's done.
Probably does minimize damage just to hit it, to make sure no buffs come off the top that put that 1 or 2 extra.
So Vulture's drawn. This is life tap. Crystallizer is out of the deck. And you have no ways left to damage yourself immediately. So you get 1/3 drop off this.
Spirits.
Whoa. Well, you gotta play that.
I'm so glad.
Unfortunately, the Mad Genius is going to shut most of this down single-handedly.
I think that depends on the hero power next turn. Doesn't that matter a lot?
To set up the Plague of Wrath, you mean? Because he already has, like, super...
Oh my gosh, I just didn't even see that shield slam.
Right, yeah. was like, what's Admirable so worried about now?
Whoa. That's not okay. I can't. Yeah. Not okay. It's 5. If you got a Wolf Rider, that'd be 6, 7, 8 into Leroy. So you tap into Leroy, and you find charge damage off the Vulture. Sure.
Seems like the
Find
line.
the Leroy.
That's 11.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So then the last sources of weird damage in your deck are going to be Knife Juggler.
Evil Genius number 2.
And exactly Evil Genius number 2. Or Minions stick in the board.
I wonder.
I think I hold.
Holding Leroy turns Rush Lackey into a point of damage off the Evil Genius.
So many
Does it have
possibilities.
any other huge impact outside of that?
So you got to think about the actual draw implications themselves, because I kind of want the Leroy and the Abusive Sergeant in hand, so that way if I draw Evil Genius next turn, I can exactly Leroy, Abusive Sergeant, Evil Genius, play both lackeys.
But also remember, at some point, Boar draws 2 Mordants this game. Like that does happen in some eventuality.
Yeah, I think if you make the push with Leroy now, that 2 Morden is just going to get you anyway.
Okay.
That's not always going to be the case, because you're getting through 8 damage right now. So
you
the
get like
discover of
Evil
lackeys,
Genius into Spell Lackey
Yeah.
and stuff, yeah.
or just Kobold at that point. You know, he's a 10.
Yeah.
So I think that Bozzzton is right to hold in this spot. I think with 2 Grim Rallies left in your deck, you can seize, you know, what, you know, terrible little points of damage you can. And I think that the Vulture represents enough of a threat to prompt something from Boar this turn anyway.
Okay.
And for Boar, I gotta believe that Eternium Rover needs to hit play this turn.
You would expect so. He's in a weird scenario where he wants this Spider Bomb to kill anything except his 1/3, so I feel like just about any minions will get played in this position. Snip Snap again, yep. That extra 1/1, potentially healing him for 2 more further down the line, could be the most crucial factor from this position.
Oh! Exactly Evil Genius can still win the game. Now that Solarium has showed up, I think you're regretting not playing the Abusive Sergeant.
Yep. This means he spends 7 on these 3 cards. Evil Genius has to eat the Abusive Sergeant. That's 9, so you can then only play 1 Lackey, which means Kobold, not enough. Only deals 10 total.
Yeah, 9 is the reach, and that's the end of it.
Boar just frantically trying to calculate if there's any way he's dead right now.
So many possibilities.
Plan B, just try and stick some damage to the board. But there's a Blast Shield staring him back.
I kind of like this idea, though.
Yep.
I didn't think about the Snip Snap. That's potentially a big problem.
Yeah, it's just the best he had.
I did say potentially.
Problem solved, but it's the best he had is just to try and load up at 1 big source of damage that couldn't be removed. BoarControl wasn't representing lethal. He had to push through a Blast Shield on the way back. So yeah, stack everything up. Say you need, you know, 9 health's worth of removal to take care of this. Unfortunately, you can't do it. Boar finally just feels a little bit comfortable that he's got over the line this game. The Evil Genius, 1 card too late. I guess 4 cards too late, because it had to be the card before the Solarium.
I like your initial narrative.
Yeah, all right, yeah. Who cares about the truth? Tell a better story. Good old Elias Sibelius is going to go around the houses trying to figure out a way out of this. I'm not entirely sure there is one.
Fight, maggot!
If these 3 cards cooked up 19 damage, I'd be eating my hat right now.
Boar's just freaking out. You ever seen someone mug for his webcam as much as BoarControl does?
I'm glad he does.
That's great. Look at this guy! Oh, what a guy.
I think with the way the lineups pan out, this game one was likely to happen. This one definitely in Boar's favor. The next couple games may tell a different story, though. Because for BoarControl, it's Druid and it's Paladin that's back behind this. And I think for Bozzzton's lineup, that means a pair of good matchups, as he's got Tempo Rogue and Warlock to fight against this. So I think for Boar, this could be trouble.
It could well be, and I think he'll be very happy just to get out of that one alive. When he saw his opening hand, when he had Elysiana in his opening hand, plus I think it was Brawl and Plague of Wrath, which sounds good. But when you have a hand that does nothing until turn 5 and features a 9-drop that's unplayable in the matchup in it, War Golem arguments aside, you do start to feel a little bit worried, especially when your opponent goes Flame Imp, Direwolf, which is just about the best start you can have in the game against Warrior as Zoo. But he managed to dig his way out of it. I think, you know, there were a few important sequences between kind of turns 4 and turn 7 where he had to allocate the Restless Mummy, the Brawl, the Warpath, and Shield Slam, I believe, kind of in the right order just to make sure he got out with maximum health. And I think that ended up mattering because we saw how fine the margins were towards the end in terms of BoarControl's final health total.
Yeah, I think the Soulfire play too, it looks like tricky on paper, but he did get to preserve the Flame Imp, which bought back 3 of the damage.
Yep.
So the differential in the Soulfire was only actually a single point of damage given the pan out of it. So if Bozzzton at any point was 1 damage off lethal that game, that would matter. Otherwise, I do think he still is supposed to Soulfire face there and just take the risk. But, you know, I'm not going to go much neither here nor there because that is just a bad matchup for Zoo. I mean,
there's
you saw
also
how good his start was.
The third option, which we didn't even really consider, is that you don't Soulfire at all that turn.
Right.
Because you're going to be able to exhaust your hand turn after turn most likely anyway. It's only like Leroy draws at that point where you get this kind of sticky situation with cards that you don't want to discard.
Yeah, and I think that's a talking point that's worthy of too there. With Bozzzton only having 1 copy of Soulfire in the deck, you're never hitting that discard side effect.
Right.
So I think with the Spirit of the Bat in play that he found off the Faceless, like, you are supposed to keep a minion in hand or tap for a minion in that spot. Like, that is potentially 4 to 5 additional attack and health that you can get on a minion there. So that to me would be the biggest talking point, is just sequencing with the bat turn. I digress though. We're going to be doing a quick break. When we come back, jumping into game number 2 of BoarControl versus Bozzzton. And I think even though BoarControl's at a lead, not necessarily favored in this set. Stay tuned.
Darker than they've ever been. As evil descends from the skies, the world cries out, how will we survive? Out of the hall of explorers, and up from the dusty tombs, they grab their whips and fedoras. These legends of the past know exactly what to do. There might be magic monsters, mummies in the markets, and ancient mysticism. But this league's gonna save. Oh no!
My name is Francisco Fragale Montas. One of my best friends came out with my nickname. We are all getting like nicknames with 3 letters for some reason, like 13 years old. My name is Francisco, and Francisco's called Pancho. So it's just like 3 letters from that, P and C. One interesting thing about me that most people don't know is that I used to study ancient history. I quit for Hearthstone a couple of years, but plan on going back at one point. My favorite Hearthstone Esports moment was when I topped like lethal 2016 Copa America Finals. That was like my first big win, and I was very, very happy. It's like finally all that I worked for coming true. Beating Grandmasters for me means that all the hard work that I put in last years and all the time that I spent the game is paying off. My favorite thing about Grandmasters would be that I get a chance to prove myself like on the big stage. What makes me unique as a player, I would say, is just bringing very complicated decks to tournament. It's mostly combo decks that people usually don't play. My personal goals this year will be to earn as much money as I can, of course, and yes, improve as a player and play the best I can.
Hi, I'm Monsanto. I came up with the username Monsanto. I was in high school. It's from the company Monsanto, the big evil corporation. One of my teachers hated that company so much that at the end of the year he told us, well, if you didn't learn anything from my class, it's okay, as long as you remember that you should hate Monsanto. And that was like such a big thing to hear from your teacher, and I just immediately changed all my usernames to Monsanto. My best Hearthstone Esports memory was in 2016 in summer prelims. I was facing Dude 7597, and I was completely losing on board as Druid against the Zoo Warlock. I had played 5 spells during the game, then I jammed the Yogg-Saron on. It cleared his board, built myself a board, and the next turn I had double Savage Roar for lethal. What makes me special as a player, I think, is I try everything. I try every possibility in decks, I try new things. And so when there's something that went under the radar, there's a big chance that I actually found it and I can bring that deck. Being in Grandmasters means a lot to me. Being able to just compete another full year of Hearthstone, that was a really big thing for me. I want to win the whole thing. That's my personal goal.
Week number 2 of Grandmasters, and we're on our second day and amidst our second match at that. I'm Nathan, that's Admirable Zamora. I'm joined by Simon Soto Welch, and right now BoarControl is up to a 1-0 lead over Bozzzton, where he bested Boston's Zoo Warlock with his own Control Warrior. And so now it's remaining in the lineup. You can see all 3 accessible for Bozzzton, and for BoarControl he's got Paladin and Druid. And Soto, I have some questions about this this next queue up from Bozzzton here, because I thought he was trying to isolate Paladin and Druid with his aggressive decks and try to, end the games before BoarControl could get the right setup for it. Instead, he's chosen to play Warrior in this situation, which leads me to the question, why didn't you play Warrior in game 1 then?
I wish I had some answers for you. That is confusing me a little bit. I will fall on the side of devil's advocate for the sake of the discussion. I think Warrior against Druid, I think we've seen it illustrated that that matchup is fine. Like, despite the fact that the Druids do seem to have such an enormous amount of threats that they can generate, I think it is quite clear if you do pick up a couple of those big removals and you're able to get off to a decent start, you are in a reasonable position as Warrior. And of course, the Warrior-Paladin matchup is something that we've discussed at length. If you didn't catch the long-form breakdown that I gave yesterday, I think when Armor Gain comes into the deck and Weapon Destruction comes into the deck, it does fall slightly back in favor of the Warrior. So maybe Bozzzton feels like he now has 2 favored matchups with his Warrior left against Druid and Paladin. I would still side with you in saying that I would have been on Zoo or Rogue here, but I can understand at least the mentality of Bozzzton. I don't agree with it, but I can understand it.
Okay. We both met our points. I think your devil's advocate point was well stated.
To be clear, 100% devil's advocate. I do not believe in any words that just came in.
He's like, just to be clear.
I mean, the factual statements that I made were factual statements, but the analysis of that, then, I was playing devil's advocate with.
Oh, gosh. We saw Bunny Hopper play this matchup very excellently earlier in the week. I think that his stance on the Warrior side of trying to ensure that he had 1 taunt in play at a time. He's playing 1 taunt minion at a time, 1 taunt minion at a time, not doubling up on taunt minions. Like he had an option to play a second Fright and Flunky alongside another one.
Yeah.
And he forewent that option. And the reason being was because he wants to have 1 taunt in the way to handle 1 true silver charge.
Yes.
He can't swing twice in 1 turn, so parse out the taunts. And I think that was a pretty eye-opening experience for me personally of playing Warrior versus Paladin, is you just need to prevent true silvers from hitting you in the face.
And it's more so than that, because it actually becomes important how you allocate throughout the game, because just having the Fright and Flunky to, say, play down on turn 8 to block a True Silver charge. That doesn't work because they can then consecrate True Silver and the damage gets through. So he was also allocating having the larger taunts on the correct turn, so whatever combination could be made, you know, Equality plus True Silver, Pyromancer plus Spell plus True Silver, whatever it was, he had a taunt with the right health total to always block that True Silver charge going face. And if you're just not familiar with the matchup at all, and we've kind of skipped a step in your understanding, it's because every point of damage in this Paladin deck has to go face. The more points of damage you can get to go face, the higher your chances are of winning. So that Pyromancer attacking right now is enormous. That's 3 damage that you do not throw into the equation at the start. You have guaranteed damage with Consecrations, with Hammer of Wraths. You have semi-guaranteed damage, if you want to look at it that way, with True Silver Champions that the opponents can play around and put taunt walls in the way. But actually getting minions to stick and attacking with them in this matchup is worth its weight in gold. It's worth its weight in something far more precious than gold, in fact.
In terms of the game, anyway, yeah. Like, you know, I'll take the gold, but
Whoa, hang on.
well, I guess it's digital, so it doesn't weigh anything.
I was going to say, how much does a digital representation of a wild Pyromancer weigh?
What kind of hard drive is it on?
Solid state. Sorry, 2019. Come on.
Those are heavy. A gold one of those would cost a lot of dollars.
Pretty sure mechanical hard drives are heavier, aren't
It's still heavy.
they? Okay.
I was thinking, like, if you had it on, like, a thumb drive or whatever, I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, might take the strategy at that point.
It's just in the cloud. It doesn't weigh anything.
Oh, no! They're like, here's your gold, idiot!
You got scammed.
Vapor gold.
Yeah. Vape gold. Sign me up.
I wished for the perfect card. Did not show up. Boar got 6 damage out of this Wild Pyro. That's very unusual. And so I guess the scope of the game for him is what's best against the next thing. Thinking Dynamatic, thinking Super Collider. Acolyte's horrible against Super Collider. It's pretty good versus Dynamatic.
It's also
So if that's
pretty
gonna
good
be
at drawing
the case-
cards.
So if that's going to be the case, coin out the Novice Engineer. Draw a card off the Acolyte, separate this with the Novice, nullify the Super Collider.
Yep, multiple things I like about this play. Bozzzton has so far struggled to kill some minions, so play more minions and try and hit with them. Secondly, Dynamatic is an option for the opponent here that hasn't been an option so far. So you're starting to say, oh, what is his hand? If he hasn't been able to kill any of my stuff, what's his hand right now? Dynamatic is right up there. If Dynamatic comes down, your Acolyte draws 2 more cards, which, oh look, coincidence, is the perfect amount of cards you want to draw alongside that. Furthermore, you drew off your Acolyte of Pain while you had a Pyromancer in play. Acolyte of Pain does not always draw multiple cards. Prismatic Lens, which is the other option you had that turn, does always draw multiple cards. So he turned his Acolyte into a better than Prismatic Lens in a situation where he could have just played Prismatic Lens.
By the way, you get to jam a True Silver to face.
Yeah, all right. Fine, yeah. Forget all that fancy stuff I just said. Hit him for 4.
I've talked about it yesterday. I think Boar is one of the best micro players that we have.
Yeah.
He micromanages all of those little things so wonderfully.
That belongs in a museum.
Bozzzton, he wants to take the card draw. It's no 4 cost option I add alongside the Weapons Project. So that Weapons Project later on is reserved for overriding a True Silver to negate 4 more damage. In the meantime, though, BoarControl has done a great job of containing the armor. You know, that's partially because Bozzzton hasn't had any taunts to put in the way, and because he didn't have any way to contest the early minions from BoarControl's side. So a stark contrast in difference from what we saw when Bunny Hopper was playing the matchup. He was able to contain that board, and he built to 50 armor very quickly.
Yeah, I will say, I do think he played the matchup close to perfectly, but he also had the hand that allowed him to play it close to perfectly. That hasn't been a luxury that's been afforded to Bozzzton so far.
That life total for BoarControl largely irrelevant. The matchup is decided by whether or not he's able to eliminate Bozzzton.
Eliminate Bozzzton.
That being said, there has to be some interest for Bozzzton for at least attempting to apply pressure.
Yeah, pressure costs your opponent turns in this matchup.
No
If you
two
can
can hold
generate
me.
stuff on board and they have to spend a turn you know, playing timeout, playing equality, shrink ray, whatever their board clear is, that's a turn where they haven't just spent all their mana on drawing cards, which could be a big impact because it can slow down their eventual Shivala by 1 or 2 turns. And if they've slowed down their Shivala by 1 or 2 turns, you've gained 4, 6, 8 armor in that meantime, and that can make all the difference.
You just look at the life totals and you think to yourself, is this a warrior mirror match? The pigeon beam. Or butterfly?
I think it's a butterfly. Like, you never see the original image. There's
Yeah,
always just something superimposed over what the thing is. I think it's a butterfly.
Oh yeah, hammer face. Discard a card.
Card out of hand, yeah. I mean, it's not. It's a decent Frost Nova in that position. It's not even really a discard. I didn't say it. Don't start.
You mentioned it the other day, though. Frost Nova in a vacuum is a terrible card.
Yes, agreed.
And right here, this would not have been a good Frost Nova turn. But it gets the job done. The goal for Boar is burn through the deck and burn through Bozzzton. And right now, the burn through Bozzzton plan is looking like it's in full effect.
It's looking real rosy.
Because as it stands, the True Silvers don't necessarily need to connect anymore. Bozzzton needs to gain 22 more health just to be at the exact break point. So 23 additional health is what he needs to stay alive before Boar can deliver that 1-2 punch with the Holy Wraths.
And we haven't even factored Zephyrus into that yet, which does change the equation from how the matchup classically happened.
And you also notice that BoarControl, you know, it's partially been due to hand size that he hasn't been able to play this prismatic lens on the far left. But I think BoarControl is the type of player when his hand's good enough, he will think about playing around
great point.
the Shirvala inverse out.
That is point number 7 to add to the 6 points I made about why I loved BoarControl's Tier 4 so much. Like, if you hit Shivala there and it flips with a Holy Wrath, that is almost certainly game over in this matchup.
Yeah. And so it's exacerbated by the point of Crystology as well. You reduce the number of minions in your deck pretty drastically when you play the Crystologies.
Yeah.
So I think all of those points have come to mind for him, and I think he's pretty much, you know, checking all the boxes accordingly so far.
Having now drawn second Holy Wrath, he is in good shape though for that prismatic lens as soon as he can make space in his hand to make it castable, if that is even a factor this game.
So that's my next question, right, is with 1 copy of Hammer of Wrath in the deck, there's not actually any burn he's missing out on if he burns something. So it would be like Shrink Ray that gets burned. He has a quality in hand. So the spells left are actually Prismatic Lens, Shrink Ray, and Timeout.
Shrink Ray sometimes matters on big Ziliax, for example.
I think of the other lens is perhaps what matters for him. Like this turn from BoarControl. Anytime I can preserve the Wild Pyromancer with the equality, it just feels right. In the deck of 1s and then search for the Prismatic Lens turn.
Face!
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 Oh, boo! If he's 1 damage off this game, he's never going to hear the end of that.
You can tell Bozzzton's starting to have some worry as well. He's not been able to contain the life total enough. Or contain the incoming damage enough, rather. Contain the life total. I guess he's done a pretty good job containing his life total.
Yeah. He's contained it underneath 30 the whole game. That's pretty impressive.
Not where you want to be.
That is honestly not easy to do for a warrior.
Just unintentionally firing shots everywhere. Yeah, this hand does not afford Bozzzton many significant impacts. I'd like to see the Eternium Rover come down. I think it's a pretty massive threat versus like Novice Engineer and Blood Mage Thalnos drawing additional cards, but with the Blood Mage Thalnos, you're thinking about Consecration exactly.
Yeah. We've talked about the Hammer of Wrath interaction and how it's actually just kind of fine to get an Eternium Rover Hammer of Wrath, because then that Hammer of Wrath is not being pointed at your face, so it's not as like much lost armor as you might immediately think it is. Blood Mage Consecration, though, that's a little upsetting if you're Bozzzton here, I think.
That's the juice if you're Boar.
Yep.
Starts making hand space. Getting through the deck.
You like my invention?
He may get through the deck without playing a second lens. Also for BoarControl, it's about the life total for Bozzzton right now. If you don't believe that he can get above 50, by all means, you should play the lens. And that means probably burning a timeout unless the remaining cards make 0 difference, which that would be about Bozzzton's life total. And so for Boar, he says, you know what? I don't need the remaining cards. Your life total is in a spot where I can kill you with 2 Holy Wraths. Have your Eternium Rover. I don't think you can get above 50.
Yeah, it's a balancing act, right? Like, taking time out to kill that Eternium Rover means that you draw less cards this turn, which means you extend the game by a turn or 2, which means Bozzzton has a turn or 2 to gain more armor. And you did not... What were we talking about yesterday? Like, bottom 5% of possible Omega assemblies?
You said bottom 10.
I said bottom 10?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's boom. It has to be boom. Because now Bozzzton is relying on rolling Blast Shields. And so not seeing Blast Shield there, I think, is a big blessing. Up to 41. Blast Shield would take him to 49. We haven't factored in the weapons project yet. BoarControl burnt Shrink Ray, a welcome sight.
BoarControl also still has 2 Consecrations sat in his hand, which takes away 4 from that equation, but there is still the Eternium Rover in play. So this is 41 up to 43, down to 41 again if he casts Consecration.
Wow, the Zephyrus being 3 cost is actually a big difference.
It actually is, yeah. That is actually a problem, because it takes away the guaranteed Soulfire combo on the turn where you drop your Shivala.
So is this a double Consecration turn ever? You have no Equality left, you have no Shrink Ray.
Currently at 41, so you take him down to 39. A weapons project would take him back up to 45, and then a blast shield on the following turn would be 52, so it doesn't change that breakpoint.
And he doesn't want
First one that comes to mind.
He doesn't want a hero power to take away vicious Scrap Hound targets.
Yeah.
So if Bozzzton, for whatever reason, would develop vicious Scrap Hound here, you get the Shivala to attack into it with Divine Shield, negating the armor.
Yes. Same deal with Ziliax, just for future turns as well. Any minion that's on the board this turn will also be on the board next turn. It'll be a target for Ziliax to charge into. But when you are going off on your Holy Wrath turn, you generally have things left over on the board, like your Shivala, for Ziliax to go into anyway.
I think Bozzzton has to take drastic action here.
Problem with using this weapons project that we haven't mentioned as well is, like, yeah, he can use it for an emergency gain 6, but then there's a Tyrion potential in the game as far as Bozton's thinking, because again, it's very hard to get a Tyrion from Zephyrus if it costs 3 instead of 2.
Well, it's hard to get the Tyrion to play anyway.
Yeah.
Pretty much always offers Tyrion. It doesn't really
Okay,
matter.
right, sure.
It's like, Tyrion, yeah!
Zephyrus is just a really big fan of the entrance fanfare. He just really feels it.
It's time to test your metal.
No blast shield rolled for Bozzzton. Shivala number 1. Take 25, dummy.
So I think Bozzzton needs shield. He needs shield block exactly.
Ziliax would heal for 6. So Ziliax plus the weapons project would take him to 26.
Yeah. Sorry. Shield block. Yeah, shield block doesn't even do it.
Double weapons project takes him to 26.
He's only got 1 copy.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, that's a Warpath, isn't it? My bad.
Yeah.
I just saw the 2-mana spell come into the hand.
So Eternium Rover, Eternium Rover 3 Warpath. That takes up 9 mana because you'd have to discover the Eternium Rover.
Yep.
Okay, then.
Hoping for Ziliax.
Ziliax. Yep.
Can the Pinata get you anything? Like, do you have Shivala that you could get? And like, have you played enough spells or something?
No way. No way does it cost less than 4. It's a good thought.
Yeah, there's no way. He hasn't played enough.
Okay, then.
Any other weird legendary with lifesteal? No, you just don't have mana to do anything else.
Yeah. Boston's on the right line, though. Might as well open the box and just see if there's something that none of us have thought about. That ain't Falco. Boar finally breathes for the first time in the last 75 seconds. That's right. He is Bozzzton. He is good.
I'm out of cards.
love the show respect. It's BoarControl. It's going to take this 2-0 over Bozzzton. I got questions about the order of play here for Bozzzton.
Play the Zephyros. I want to see what happens.
He's not a BM player. Although I'm curious what it would do in that
I just
spot.
want to see what you get. Yeah.
Technically, the Cheval is public information.
Yeah.
The Holy Rat's not, though. Zephyr's just like, I'm just Cheval. All right.
Just curious. Pretty important win, though, for BoarControl. He's now evened up his score in total to 2-2. And also, if he cares about these kind of things, if you care about these kind of things, that's actually the rubber match, because they were in the same division last season. They weren't either of the players that flipped, and they went 1-1 last season. So Boar now has a positive record over Bozzzton in Grandmasters as a whole.
Yep, and over the course of the 7 weeks of regular season play, they all play each other twice. So Bozzzton will have an opportunity later on to try to even that score up. But, you know, this is a step in the right direction here for Boar, where his early season in Season 1, it did not look good. And it continued to somewhat go that trend. He was just getting the wrong side of the matchups. I think he's predicting what the field would bring. Predicting what the field would bring correctly, but not necessarily what his opponents were bringing correctly. And that's a stark contrast when you're submitting decks week to week. So let's get to the winner's interview. BoarControl, can you hear us?
Microphone muted, you big dummy.
Wait, it isn't muted.
Okay. We hear you. We heard you. We heard that.
I hear you. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
we hear you. You're good.
I'm not going to call you a dummy. I don't think you're very
It's
dumb.
all right. You better not, Admirable.
Whoa!
Or else.
Them's fighting words.
Yeah, or else you're going to insult me for having ice in my tea. I'm from Texas. Iced tea.
Do we have actual Hearthstone questions?
Well, I was going to leave it up to you. You
All right.
take the lead here.
So I don't know how you feel about like queue order stuff in this format, but we were talking about it a little bit. Were you expecting at all to go up against Warrior in that second matchup? Because we thought that was the last deck he was going to queue.
Oh, I thought it was distinctly possible. From his perspective, it's like the mind games flips. Like, I was practicing those in the series, predicting if he protected his Warrior or if he protected his Hunter, because I thought they were both reasonable. And I was going through both lines, because he's quite unfavored with his lineup versus me, so he has to try and find a way to queue the right matchups, right? So I worked out that it was quite likely he would queue the Zoo if he protected the Warrior. The Warrior was a bait to say, I'm going to queue Warrior, so he gets my Druid, that matchup. And then, like, next up, it's like, well, what happens now? Does Zoo go into Druid again, or does Paladin go into Warrior? And I worked out the worst case scenario for me was, like, his Zoo into my Druid. I'm actually fine with the Paladin Warrior matchup. Like, I've played that matchup a lot. It's pretty 50-50. Okay. So I figured my Paladin had 50-50 favored. So I thought queuing Paladin was the best line.
And so, kind of reflecting on this week so far, with Druid and Shaman being two of the most brought decks to Grandmasters over the last 2 weeks, where do you feel like those two decks sit in the metagame? Are they the front runners, or are they counterplay options? Like, where do you feel this is moving in the following weeks?
Well, yeah, clearly we've seen a lot of Shaman banned and Druid queued, protected this week, but there are decks some people have bought. Some people have been further ahead of the meta. There's Combo Priest, which does beat them. So I think we have quite a diverse metagame here. If you want to bring Druid, someone can counter it with Priest. But if you want to bring Priest, someone can counter that with Aggro, with Rogue. So there's different lineup strategies, and it's just a read on your opponent, and hopefully you hit the right things on the week.
So I have a request for you for next week, or I don't know if you can live up to this, but can you work on some new gestures to camera? Because I feel like we've seen this one a lot, and we've seen like thinking emoji quite a lot. Like, can you work on some fresh stuff for me for next week?
I'll try my best. I spent all my time practicing Hearthstone games, so there might not be time. But if I can squeeze it in, just that extra time, I'll give it a go.
There you go. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Just pencil it into your schedule real quick.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I got 12 minutes for gesture practicing a la Sato's request, so I guess I'll do that right now.
What is that? The constipation gesture?
He's just practicing. I don't know. I mean, you got to get past that point. Is kind of the point.
Right.
Yeah, you got to test all the gestures, write them off if they're bad. Yeah.
See, someone who practices knows this. You got to get through the bad. Talk to me about some of the decks you've practiced. Have you practiced anything wacky that you're just like, you thought it was going to be okay, and it's just like, wow, this is just bad, or perhaps it was just good. You don't have to reveal the good part. Obviously, that could be secret.
Yeah, I mean, I tried making Mid Hunter good forever, and then Casey and stuff brought a list, and I was like, wait, did I miss it last week? But I don't think it was very. It was very good. I couldn't. You just don't beat Tomb Warden from Warrior with the Mid Hunter. Reno Hunter just seemed better. Other wacky stuff. I'm playing pretty standard stuff.
I saw you on stream for like the first week of the expansion, like insisting that Token Druid was good. Like, what happened to that?
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
It wasn't good.
Okay,
No.
all right, fair enough.
That's what happened.
Okay. That makes sense.
This happens every new set, right?
Yeah,
We're like, Token Druid!
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
All right, well, Boar, thank you very much for your time. Congratulations on your win. Very important win here to keep you at an even record. So looking forward to seeing you play next week.
All right, thank you. Have a good cast, guys.
Well, that was nice ending to that one. I will have a good cast. Thank you, Boar.
I love Boar.
That feels good.
Just a bit less of this. Can we just?
What if that's the maneuver?
What does that mean?
Like the branding maneuver. Like what if gesturing song lyrics is what he really wants to do.
He's just trying to make a YMCA for Ants gesture, his brand, like that seems weird.
Perhaps.